Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. Once again coming at you for one of these spooky, scary, wintertime kind of, I don't know, quote-unquote horror movie reviews. This movie very much reminds me of a movie that I reviewed years and years and years ago by the name of Hobbs End. And also a movie, it reminds me of another movie that had come out after that and I reviewed recently. I think I reviewed it maybe in December 2018 or something like that. I think it was Lake Alice, which is another movie that's like, I don't know, desolate house location in the woods during the winter. You can only do so much with that kind of a thing. But this movie I came across in the clearance section on Blu-ray, and I was just like, Naomi Watts is kind of cute or whatever, and it's called Shut In. So I thought, you know what, this is actually a higher price, quote-unquote clearance Blu-ray at $5. It's just like, yeah, the clearance prices are getting higher and higher. Pretty soon it'll be like $10, $20 in the clearance section, but I figured Blu-ray, DVD combo, $5, Naomi Watts, winter. I mean, look at this imagery on the back. I mean, come on, $5 Blu-ray, cute chick with the, well, I think she might be a little too old to be called chick. Cute woman with a lantern, snowy woods environment. $5 Blu-ray DVD combo, Shut In. I went for it, so I'm coming at you to review it. This movie incidentally also stars this guy Oliver Platt. Also is a kind of a bit part in this movie, Shut In. So let's get into it. Yeah, not the greatest thing in the world. This movie starts with Naomi Watts and the husband or whatever. Well, actually, it turns out that her son in this movie isn't really her son. I guess it's her husband's son, and she's like kind of, stepmom or whatever. But at the beginning of this movie, in a beautiful summer scenery time of year, it's like she's gonna, Naomi Watts' character wants the husband to take this teenage son away to go get help. I don't know if we know what his problem is at the beginning of the movie or what, but I mean, I guess she's just sick of him, I don't know what, but at the beginning of the movie in the beautiful summertime season or whatever, Dad's taking the son away to some, I don't know what, I don't even know what, I forgot what, either a school or I don't know what. They're basically getting the hell rid of him or whatever. So anyway, the son has and I will say I like the kid who plays the son. He's got this really cool, like late 70s, early 80s teenage, bad kid feel, kind of like the kid, in the Amityville 2 or whatever. He's just got this late 70s, early 80s vibe about him. Like if you've seen some teenage kid in one of those movies from that era, it's just that the kid really, it's like he's living in the wrong era. I like the kid in that regard. And unfortunately, because of what the kid ends up doing, which is very little, throughout the course of the movie is kind of wasted or whatever. But so that's the beginning of the movie, driving the teenage, presumably troubled teen son to some school or boarding school or whatever. Anyway, the kids, they start having an argument which causes them to crash, and I think Dad dies in the crash, and it's kind of, we're meant to believe that son becomes like a vegetable, like, an invalid, just a vegetable, which, I think I don't know if it's 6 months later or something, we're seeing now, Naomi Watts' character is basically just gotta, it's just a vegetable where she's gotta get him out of bed, put him in the bathtub, wash him, feed him, slop food into his drooling mouth, and it's just like, oh man. So Naomi Watts' character, I guess, is the psychologist woman who, I guess, she lives out in the woods in her house, just like Hobbs End or Lake Alice or whatever. But I think what sets this movie apart from those is, like, there's another building, I think, right next to her house that is like her business, her office or whatever, of the psychologist business, where she'll help kids or whatever. She tries to help kids, and we see her at the beginning helping this deaf kid, and I think she actually, the deaf kid, I think the mom's frustrated with the deaf kid, and I don't think they're going to come back anymore or whatever, to move the kid away to some other area or whatever, and she, as a kind of a goodbye or going away present, gives this deaf kid, like, I think it's her son's, like, hat and scarf, because the son doesn't need it, he doesn't go outside anymore. So kind of gives the son's hat and scarf to this deaf kid that she, basically at this point doesn't think she's ever going to see again. And we just, I don't know, we're just the first third of this movie is just setting up, I don't know whatever. I mean, nothing really that amazing happens in this movie, so I don't know what it's setting up, but it's just showing her life now, you know, post-accident 6 months later in the winter, and just some of her life. She's got a secretary, which is kind of stupid to have a secretary. I mean, just do your own, I don't know. But I guess if she's raking in the dough being a psychologist or whatever, she could afford a secretary, but just shows her life, just, you know, looking after invalid son, which isn't actually her son, which is, you know, it kind of, it makes you even wonder why is she doing it at all, and she thinks the same thing as the movie progresses. It's like, well, I don't think she says it in so many words, but it's like, it's not even her son, you know, and she doesn't really necessarily want to do this for the rest of her life, you know, just with this man doll or man baby, just, that can't do anything. I mean, that just, in a quite literal sense, just does nothing, just is this slob of meat that she bathes and feeds and all this crap and puts in front of the TV all day, and it's just like whatever. And as the movie progresses, there's like all these weird, I don't know, scary sounds or this and that. The movie kind of tries to take advantage of the desolate, isolated woods in the winter, spooky environment. I mean, it kind of does it and kind of doesn't. I mean, for me, a movie is just going to be a win just because it's taking place in the woods during the winter. And, you know, as I've said so oftentimes in reviews past, being an anal bastard, you know, these movies are fun to be able to kind of make winter not so horrible, to be able to watch movies like this in the winter. And I don't know, you think you know, if you had a brain, you think you'd want to watch movies that, you know, or the show Baywatch or something that takes place in the Caribbean like during the winter. But I guess, I don't know. I guess, well, I don't want to watch winter movies any other time than winter to be reminded of it. So that's why these movies I tend to watch in the winter, because who the hell wants to watch a movie like this in the summer? You know, spring, summer, or fall. Not me, so I watch them in the winter. So I don't know if it's like 20 minutes into the movie maybe or something like that. The deaf boy, there's this scary scene at night or something like that where Naomi Watts is, and incidentally I don't know how old she is in this movie, but she's, I mean, for being, you know, presumably in her, you know, early to mid 40s or something like that in this movie, yeah, she's still looking pretty good. And holy cow, you wouldn't, you know, if you just saw her, you know, from a distance and, you know, in the street or something like that, and just based on her body alone, you wouldn't think she's no, you know, mid-40s-year-old woman. So she's still holding up really great in this movie. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, there's some scary scene at night where she's hearing sounds and noises and investigating and stuff. And turns out this deaf kid, and this is so unrealistic, but whatever, it's a movie, doesn't matter. The deaf kid that, you know, she was actually, I think, helping, you know, and the deaf kid's mom that is just all frustrated and leaving, or not gonna see the Naomi Watts character anymore. Deaf kid ends up like, this just makes no sense to me, because I don't know how far away they live or whatever, and how the kid even got here, but basically he breaks into Naomi Watts' vehicle in her garage and is just like sleeping in there, and it's just like, what the fuck? And she ends up taking the kid in, and I mean, not for a long time, but I mean into the house, and I don't know, gives him food or something like that. And I think she goes to bed or something maybe, and then wakes up to, I don't know if she wakes up that night to a noise or something, to see that, oh my gosh, she goes into, maybe she didn't put him in a bed, maybe on the couch or something, but goes to check him, and he's like not there, and I think the door is wide open, so it's like, oh my god, the kid ran away, and it's just like, oh my gosh, oh no. So Naomi Watts keeps, you know, now that this kid who she feels guilty about, who she, you know, broke into her house, and she took him under his wing, or she took him under her wing for all of, you know, whatever, 3 or 4 hours before he presumably, fucking runs away out into the woods again in the middle. And she actually drops this temperature. What the hell temperature did they drop? The temperature of 15 degrees Fahrenheit is actually mentioned in this movie. And what's so ironic is, I think maybe see breath once outside, but I think the other times there's no breath or whatever. And who knows, maybe, I don't know if the breath is real or digital or whatever, but it's just so funny how it's 15 degrees in Fahrenheit, and it's just like, every time the characters, you know, she's seen outside, her jacket's never zipped, she's never got a hat on. It's just like, you know, in 15 degrees Fahrenheit, you want to zip up your jacket and you want to have a hat on, period. And it's just like the scenes where she's out, you know, at night looking around, investigating noises, and it's just like, and then one time she even leaves her door open. You don't do that if it's 15 degrees Fahrenheit. You just don't. And being a Minnesotan, I know about this stuff, so believe me. As I was saying, and as so often is the case, got sidetracked, she, throughout the course of this movie, even after the kid presumably runs away, she keeps hearing noises and has visions and now that the kids run away, and she kind of feels responsible for, taking the kid in only to have him run away again, so she spends the next 15-20 minutes feeling responsible for this and having nightmares about it. And even early on in the movie, she had a nightmare before this happened about, bathing her son or her dead husband's son and like drowning him, and she woke, and that's like, oh man, that's hardcore, and she wakes up. So the character's having these thoughts, and what I was getting at before is as the movie progresses, I think she ends up saying, yeah, I'm going to send this kid to a home because I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I think she made that decision before this kid broke in and ran away again, and it's just like, oh my gosh. So at this point in the movie, maybe it's about halfway into the movie, she's like, the kid's broken in and ran away again, and she's just feeling all guilty and stuff, and watching the news about the ongoing ordeal with this kid, and watching the news, and it being 15 degrees Fahrenheit out. She's like, well, the news and her and everyone that she talks to is like, well, the kid ain't gonna last very long. What's he gonna do? Just sleep on a snow pile in 15 degrees? Not that it'll get colder at night, or whatever. Oh gosh. Anyway, the kid's not gonna last long, and I don't know. The movie spends 10, 15, 20 minutes on her guilt and having the kid run away, and what's nightmares about it and what's going to happen and all this and that. And then the co-star by the name of, I always forget his frickin' name, Oliver Platt co-star, who she always does like Skype calls with, on the computers and stuff, is, recommending, always giving her advice, and recommends to have some, send him some blood so he can get her on some, medication to help her sleep or whatever. And the first kind of twist in the movie is, Oliver Platt character, I don't know if this is halfway into the movie, maybe an hour in, well, probably not an hour in, maybe halfway into the movie, where he's like, I'm really disappointed in you, you're taking medications without asking me. And she's like, what, huh? It turns out basically she's, has some like drugs or some kind of medication, in her system already, and it's just like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And it's just kind of like, is she... at this point as a viewer, you're just like, you're either annoyed or annoyed, wondering what's going on, and it's just like, well, they're setting something up, something's going to be revealed. Not long after this, maybe it's probably about an hour mark into the movie or something like that, it's revealed that the catatonic vegetable son is in fact not, and it's kind of revealed in a cool way. I think it's actually on a Skype call where he actually is telling her on the computer, like, yeah, you've already got, medication and drugs in your system. What's going on here? And I think she gets up for some reason to check on something, or to do something. Or no, this is really unrealistic. She actually hangs up the call with Oliver Platt, and then it's like Oliver Platt can still see. I don't know if I'm missing something, but it looks like she hung up on him, and then like he can still, her camera's on her computer's still on, and he can still see in the room, and he can see that the catatonic vegetable son is no longer in the chair, the wheelchair thing that he sits in constantly in the background. And he's like, oh my gosh, and then like it's just like the son goes walking through the frame really quickly. And it's just like, at that point, of course, Oliver Platt and the viewers know that the son, who we thought is a catatonic vegetable the whole movie, or the first hour, is in fact the guy who's doing all this stuff, and probably put the drugs, maybe some kind of drugs or medication in her water or drink or something like that. And it's just like, oh my gosh, everything hits the fan. And as the movie progresses, now we find out that the son is, I think the son, basically, when she took that deaf kid in, it broke in very unrealistically into her garage and into her car and stuff, and he took him in. That was like the moment, I think, where that pissed off the catatonic son, because then he's got competition, see. And I think what happened is the catatonic son, vegetable son, I think he kidnapped, I don't know exactly what he did with this kid, but it turns out the kid actually didn't run away. He made it look like that, and I don't know if he put the kid in the basement or in the closet or some kind of special secret, compartment where she couldn't find the kid or whatever. And the last like 30 minutes of the movie is like them being frickin', you know, held, you know, mom and the deaf kid being held hostage by this crazy son. And the movie does a very Shining thing, you know, the Stanley Kubrick movie, The Shining thing, where this Oliver Platt character, much like the black character in The Shining, then you know something's wrong, and he drives out to the house. It's kind of the house is the overlook in this instance, and shows up only to be killed by the teenage son. And it's just like it's such a, you know, Stanley Kubrick Shining ripoff, and it's just like, oh my gosh, and it's just like, oh my gosh. But so Oliver Platt shows up to save the day, to be killed, I'm pretty sure, by the teenage son. And it's like the last 25 minutes is cat and mouse between, you know, Naomi Watts' character and this evil teen, you know, formerly known, or thought to be a, you know, catatonic vegetable. And so the last 20-25 minutes is this cat and mouse, her trying to, you know, now that she realized that the boy didn't run away, deaf boy didn't run away, and she's trying to sneak, very much just like Stanley Kubrick Shining again, trying to sneak this young boy out of the house. And it's just, you know, they try to go out the ceiling like a skylight, and I'm like, I don't know why they don't go out some door or window. Instead of, you know, breaking the skylight window and going out that way, wouldn't you just break any other window that's like conveniently on the side of the house? I mean, there's just so many things about this movie that make absolutely no sense. And it's just like, the only thing that really kept me watching is it's actually shot digitally, I imagine, but it's actually a rather, and on Blu-ray it actually looks really, really well, and there's a lot of photography that's got a lot of candlelight in it and stuff. So the movie is actually a relatively decent looking digitally shot movie, and you know, the moonlight on the snow exteriors at night and stuff look good, and the movie in general, even during the day as a whole, it's a really, for being a, you know, kind of a more of a low budget independent movie that probably wasn't in the theater or anything like that, or at least not very wide, you know, looks really, really good. And that's, you know, combined with the wintertime country, you know, ambience of being out in the woods in the country house in the winter, that kind of stuff, you know, I like that kind of ambience, and the movie does that in a good way. And that's the only reason that, you know, combined with the movie really looking pretty good, is Naomi Watts, even at her age in this movie, is still fun to look at. So those things are some of the things that actually kept me watching. But the last 20-25 minutes where it's just like they're dragging it out, just, you know, her trying to, you know, save the kid and save herself from crazy teenage, you know, stepson, is just like, oh my gosh. There's even another Stanley Kubrick Shining ripoff where she puts on her boots and goes to, you know, walk out in the woods or around the house or something like that in the snow or whatever, only to retrace her steps backwards and go back into the house, put the boots in the closet and hide in the closet, you know. And it's just like, how many Shining ripoffs? There's at least 3 Stanley Kubrick Shining ripoffs in this movie, and it's just like, oh my gosh, I can see doing 1 or maybe even 2, but 3, it's just like, holy Toledo. And the teenage son ends up finding, you know, just seeing the snow coming back and the, you know, the trailing towards the closet where the, you know, the snowy boots are in there, and he just ends up figuring it out anyway that they're still in there. And there's this eventual chase, like through the woods to this dock. They've got this, you know, dock on this little lake or whatever that, you know, as a family they've, you know, been in during the summer and stuff. And another thing that's so unrealistic about this movie, if it's 15 degrees Fahrenheit or colder or whatever, that keep saying it is, well, maybe not keep saying, but have said at least once 15 degrees. It's like in the lake in this movie, at the end of the movie, there's this chase at night, you know, where the crazy teen character chases Naomi Watts and the little deaf boy to the dock. The lake is completely open water, just, you know, flowing water, like it's above freezing. That thing would be completely frozen. So that's just like one of the most unrealistic things about the end of this movie, or this movie in general, is, you know, there's this fight on the dock, and I don't even remember, but I don't know if the deaf kid ends up in the water or whatever, but I think someone gets clunked on the head. I think Naomi Watts' character ends up clunking the crazy, you know, stepson on the head, and the stepson falls into the water dead or whatever. I don't remember if the deaf kid ends up in the water or not, but one thing I will give this movie is you think that they do the thing. I was watching it and I'm like, okay, well the kid's gonna pop out of the lake and there'll be one more struggle. At least they didn't do that route. Like once she clumped him out, I think she clumped the, the stepson on the head with a hammer or something, and she did that, and at least he was dead or whatever at that point. You think normally in a movie, like if it had been a bigger budget Platinum Dunes bullshit movie or something in a theater, he would have popped out of the lake and, there would have been another struggle on the dock or something. At least that didn't happen. So the movie basically ends where, now it's summer again, maybe 6 months later again, where she's driving the deaf kid to like some adoption center. So like we're meant to assume that she's just going to adopt the kid. Like the mom, the kid's mom is so frustrated with the deaf kid that she's just going to give him away. It just seems really weird at that late stage, a kid being a 9 or something, 8 or 9 years old, that you're just going to give him away at that point. But whatever, I mean, I guess everything pretty much does happen out in the world. So that's the movie by the name of Shut In. I'm going to go 1 3/4 stars out of 4 stars for Shut In. The only saving grace really to this movie is Naomi Watts is still pretty easy to look at in this movie. And if you like this kind of, Hobbs End / Lake Alice / Stanley Kubrick Shining environment, where it's this desolate, isolated location in the winter out in the woods or whatever. That's the thing that this movie does the best, is it does that, that secluded winter, woodsy nighttime, well, and daytime, but a lot of the scary stuff obviously happens at night. It does that, thing very well, and as I said, the movie, for being, digitally shot and stuff, the cinematographer is pretty competent. The movie is mostly a pretty movie or a handsome movie to look at. It looks really well. It looks really good, and doesn't have that like just over Hollywood over cinematographized look. It's got a very natural lighting kind of a look to it, and it is as I said, it's Naomi Watts is fun to look at, and so is the movie in general. So I wouldn't exactly recommend the movie. I don't feel like the money was wasted. I mean, you spend $5 just going to a theater to see a movie once. So to having a Blu-ray DVD combo of this movie for $5, I feel like, it's something I can see revisiting again in the future. It's definitely not going to be added to the get rid of pile. It'll definitely be a keeper. I can see this being, something I want to pull out once a winter, every other winter or something like that. So there's the movie, or my movie review for Shut In. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, we'll see you on the next one.